I never imagined that organizing my son's 10th birthday party would result in our Homeowners Association president being led away in handcuffs. But that's apparently what happens when someone oversteps their authority one too many times. Let me explain how a beautiful spring Saturday in our peaceful suburban neighborhood became the day Karen Matthews, the self-appointed ruler of Oakwood Estates, finally faced the consequences she deserved. It all began 3 weeks before the party. I had submitted the required notice to the HOA detailing our plans for a simple backyard celebration, 20 children, a few parents, a bounce house, and a small tent as a precaution against rain. Everything complied fully with the community's extensive covenants. Approval arrives 2 days later, signed by Karen herself, accompanied by a handwritten note emphasizing that all activities must end precisely at p.m., and that noise ordinances would be rigorously upheld. On the morning of Max's birthday, I was up at dawn arranging space-themed decorations, his latest passion. My wife had commissioned a custom rocket ship, cake, and I had spent the previous evening suspending glowing stars from our pergola. Everything looked flawless, and entirely within HOA regulations. Even the bounce house, which I had positioned carefully to remain out of sight from the street, measured exactly 12 feet, the maximum height permitted by the covenant. The party began at noon, and by 12:30, our yard was filled with energetic 10-year-olds. Several parents enjoying lemonade and perfect 75-degree weather. Then I spotted her striding up the driveway, clipboard clutched firmly, floral capri pants impeccably pressed, blonde bob swaying with every purposeful step. Karen Matthews had come for an inspection. I received reports of unauthorized structures on your property, she declared loudly, skipping any greeting. The children closest to us stopped playing, picking up on the abrupt tension. Hello to you too, Karen, I responded calmly. As you can see, everything here has been approved by the board. I have the paperwork inside, if you'd like to examine it. She sniffed disdainfully, surveying the yard like a warden searching for infractions. The bounce house appears to exceed height restrictions, and that tent was not mentioned in your application. I kept my composure, though my wife sent me a cautionary look from across the yard. We had dealt with Karen before. Every resident of Oakwood Estates had their own Karen story. She had fined the Johnsons for leaving trash cans out 10 minutes past pickup time. She had mailed certified letters to the Patels over an unapproved garden gnome. But this was the first time she had targeted our family directly. Actually, Karen, the bounce house is exactly 12 feet tall, well within guidelines, and the tent was listed in my diagram right here, I said, producing my copy of the approval from my back pocket. I had learned to carry documentation for exactly these situations. See, page 2, item 4, temporary shade structure, 10 by 10. Her eyes narrowed as she grabbed the paper from my hand. I could practically hear her mind racing to find another violation. The other parents had edged closer by now, observing the exchange with looks ranging from sympathy to barely hidden amusement. Everyone knew Karen, and no one was shocked. Well, she said at last, the noise level is excessive. I can hear the children from 3 houses away. It's a birthday party, Karen, during permitted hours. Just children playing in daylight on a Saturday, I replied slowly, as if clarifying a difficult idea. One of the dads behind me stifled a laugh into his cup. Karen's face reddened, clashing with her salmon-colored polo shirt embroidered with Oakwood Estates HOA president. She drew herself up to her full 5'4" height and announced, I'll be monitoring the situation. Any violations will result in immediate fines. As she marched away, I returned to the party, hoping that would conclude the matter. I oversaw the piñata, ensured every child had fair turns in the bounce house, and was slicing the rocket ship cake when I noticed Karen again. This time, she stood at the property line, snapping photos with her phone. Is she serious? My wife whispered while serving cake plates. This is getting creepy. I nodded and decided to confront it head on. Wiping my hands on a napkin, I approached where Karen stood, documenting what she undoubtedly believed were offenses warranting the HOA's maximum fine of $300. Karen, you're making the children uncomfortable, I said quietly. If you have concerns, we can discuss them tomorrow. Today is Max's special day, She lowered her phone and fixed me with a look of pure, self-righteous outrage that nearly made me chuckle. This isn't about the children. This is about rules and property values. That bounce house is visible from certain angles on the street, and the streamers on your mailbox are non-regulation. I took a deep breath. The bounce house was approved for this location, and the streamers will be removed by tonight. They're simply balloons on a string. Karen, rules are rules, she retorted, lifting her chin. If we let you get away with balloons today, tomorrow someone will want flamingos. It's a slippery slope. At that instant, Max ran up to us, chocolate frosting smeared across his grinning face, excitement shining in his eyes. Dad, can we do water balloons now? All my friends are ready. Before I could respond, Karen cut in. Water balloons? Those weren't in your application. That's unauthorized water usage and potential landscaping damage. Max's smile faded. And that was the moment something inside me snapped, not in anger, but with the firm resolve of a judge who has heard quite enough. The water balloons are biodegradable, Karen, as required by Section 7.3 of the Community Environmental Guidelines, and we're using them in the designated play area over the tarp. Now, if you'll excuse us, my son is waiting. Bentley guided Max back to his friends, gave the go-ahead for the water balloon battle, and spent the next half hour overseeing the joyful chaos of 20 kids in varying degrees of sogginess. I nearly forgot about Karen until one of the parents tapped me on the shoulder. I think you should see this, he said, nodding toward the street. There, beside her immaculate white SUV, Karen was gesturing wildly to two police officers who had just pulled up. My heart sank. She hadn't simply complained at the HOA. She had dialed the actual police. I walked over to the group, acutely aware of the parents and children watching from the yard. As I drew nearer, I'd hear Karen's voice, shrill and demanding. They're violating at least 7 different covenant rules, she was insisting. And when I tried to address it, the homeowner became hostile and threatening. One of the officers, a woman whose calm demeanor suggested she had handled plenty of these non-emergency calls, noticed me approaching. Sir, is this your residence? Yes, officer. I'm James Wilson. We're hosting my son's 10th birthday party, fully approved by the HOA board 3 weeks ago. I kept my tone even and respectful, mindful of the example I was setting for Max and his friends. He's lying, Karen interrupted. The approval was for a much smaller gathering. What they're doing amounts to a public nuisance. The female officer exchanged a subtle glance with her partner, the faintest hint of an eye roll. Ma'am, what specific emergency prompted you to call 911 today? Karen blinked, momentarily unsettled by the direct question. Well, they're breaking HOA rules, and he was aggressive when I pointed it out. The male officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, did you call the emergency line for a homeowners association dispute? Karen tugged at her polo shirt, straightening it defensively. Yes, it's your job to enforce the rules. No, ma'am, the female officer replied firmly. It's not. Our job is to respond to emergencies. HOA disputes are civil matters. I watched Karen's expression shift from self-assurance to doubt, but he was hostile. I felt threatened. The officer turned to me. Sir, were you hostile toward this woman? No, officer, I answered. I simply asked her to let the children enjoy the party without being photographed or disrupted. We have all the required permissions for this event. I pulled out my approval form once more. I'd be happy to show you. As the officers examined the paperwork, several other parents drifted over, offering their own versions of events. The truth emerged quickly, and Karen's face flushed a deep crimson. Furthermore, I added quietly, this isn't the first time Miss Matthews has used her position to harass residents. There have been numerous complaints about her enforcement tactics. The female officer returned my documents and faced Karen. Ma'am, did you identify yourself as reporting an emergency when you called 911? Karen's voice grew quieter. I might have said it was urgent. The officer's expression sharpened. Dispatch confirmed you reported an emergency situation with potential for violence at this address. That constitutes misuse of emergency services. What followed felt almost dreamlike. The officer stepped away for a brief consultation with her partner, then returned to where Karen stood, now clearly anxious. "Miss Matthews, please turn around and place your hands behind your back," the male officer said evenly. Karen's eyes flew wide in disbelief. "What? You can't be serious." "I'm afraid we are. You're under arrest for misuse of emergency services, filing a false police report, and harassment." As the officer read Karen her rights, I stood frozen, unable to process the scene. The party had ground to a complete stop, with children and adults alike staring as the HOA president was led to the cruiser, protesting vehemently about lawsuits and how this would never hold up. Once Karen was secured in the back of the police car, the female officer came back to me. "Sorry for the interruption to your son's party, sir. Filing a false emergency call is a serious offense. She's facing a misdemeanor charge with potential fines up to $2,500 and possibly up to a year in jail, though that's unlikely for a first offense." After the police departed, taking a still indignant Karen with them, a hush fell over the backyard. Then one of the dads began a slow clap, and soon all the adults were laughing, while the kids buzzed with excited questions about whether the mean lady was really going to jail. The next day, I received an email from the HOA vice president. Karen had been immediately suspended pending an emergency board meeting. By the following week, she was permanently removed from her position, hit with a $1,000 fine for conduct unbecoming of a board member, and rumors spread that her high-end real estate firm had placed her on administrative leave because of the charges. When I spotted Karen a month later in the grocery store, she abruptly turned her cart and hurried down another aisle. She seemed diminished somehow, her usual bluster gone. Neighborhood gossip later revealed she had taken a plea deal, a $500 fine, 40 hours of community service, and 6 months of probation. The expression on her face the moment she realized that no one, not even the president of the Oakwood Estates HOA, was above the law is something I'll never forget.